This is going to be our next part of the 20th New York State Militia at Gettysburg on Gettysburg Battlefield Ultimate, part 54. And we're here at the 20th New York State Militia Monument. We have just ended day 2. We're along the line of battle, which would be July 3rd here along the copse of trees. And on the evening of July 2nd, 1863, Major Walter Van Rensselaer had reminisced that he slept on a rock on the night of the 2nd into the 3rd, and the area that the 20th New York State Militia, which is right here today, and again here's the wall, and that wall would have extended in 1863 across what is today Hancock Avenue. Where you see the monument to the Vermont boys here being cleaned, the line would have extended in this direction, and the 151st position and the 20th New York State Militia most likely would have been in this area, and the rocks that Major Walter Van Rensselaer would have rested on would have been in this area right here, near where the Hancock wounding spot is, possibly destroyed by Hancock Avenue, and then right into here. This would have been the position of the 151st Pennsylvania. I am standing again at the witness tree, the walnut witness tree. So we're leaving day 2, and we're about to start Friday, July the 3rd of 1863, and we'll take a look at that in our next part here of the 20th New York State Militia at Gettysburg here on Gettysburg Battlefield Ultimate. On July 3rd, 1863, the 20th New York State Militia was positioned in this area. During the day, General Lee had come up with a plan where he would attack the Union Center at the copse of trees just to the north of our position. And during this attack, he would hit directly the center of the Union line, in which he thought was weakened. Meade, just in the distance the night before, had counseled with all his generals, and they decided that they would fight here, and he actually figured Lee's plan out correctly, that they would attack the Union Center. So he was ready for it, and he had troops along a stone wall here on Cemetery Ridge, and that point where you see the trees today would be the converging point of the Confederate Army. Now I'm going to walk along this wall toward the copse of trees, and we're going to talk about Stannard's Vermont Brigade was in this area, the 151st Pennsylvania, then the 20th New York State Militia, then of course here would have been the 82nd New York, okay, next to them would have been the Minnesota, the 1st Regiment Minnesota Volunteers, which you can see their monument right here, okay, and that's of course the 1st Minnesota of July 2nd fame. To their right would have been the 15th Massachusetts, and then down the line would have been the 19th Maine and the 20th Massachusetts, which down here you can see the pudding stone. Here's the 15th Massachusetts monument here. And then down 2 monuments would have been the 20th Massachusetts, which, by the way, was under the command of Captain Paul Revere, of the a descendant of Paul Revere of the American Revolutionary War, who was killed where the monument sits today. And as I try to give you an idea of the line, next to the 20th Massachusetts would of course been the 19th Maine, the 20th Massachusetts after them, and then of course down in the distance the 69th Pennsylvania, and then all the way at the end the 71st Pennsylvania. So this would have been the line of battle here on July 3rd, 1863. And of course, as we focus on the 20th New York State Militia, they would have been to the left of our position in the area where my camera is, where you see the person walking there in the distance. This has been our next part on the 20th New York State Militia at Gettysburg on Gettysburg Battlefield Ultimate. Okay, this is going to be our next part on the 20th New York State Militia here at Gettysburg on Gettysburg Battlefield Ultimate. And it is July 3rd, 1863 at 1:03 p.m. Lee's plan, which we would know as Longstreet's assault or Pickett's charge, began by an artillery barrage that began at 1:03 p.m. in the afternoon, where over 150 Confederate artillery started firing here to Cemetery Ridge from a mile away. And these artillery projectiles actually overshot this ridge and ended up going behind most of the Union line. However, the smoke from the battle was so intense that they couldn't see. Now, on this side, the Union artillerists had actually held back their fire because they understood that the Confederate artillery was overshooting. However, by holding back their fire, they deceived the Confederates into thinking that they were actually picking off Union's batteries. Now, two of the batteries that I want to talk about is the batteries of Cowan and Rory, which were in this area. These batteries, on July 2nd, 1863, there had been an area of trees over here. And those trees were purposely cut down so that these batteries could then fire in this direction on July 2nd of 1863 toward the Klingel and Sherfy farms in the distance to combat Longstreet's Day 2 attack. And those trees were cut down so that Rority's and Cowan's battery could actually fire with a clear view in that southern direction over there. Now, if you go to Webster's Dictionary and you look up trees that have been cut down and left where they were cut, that is called a slashing. And I want you to remember that term because the term the slashing, especially at the Battle of Gettysburg, is very seldomly, if ever, used. So July 3rd, 1863, the battle begins at 1:03. The artillery overshoots. The field is filled with smoke. The Union artillery holds back their fire and preserves their ammunition because they know what's coming. They've figured out Lee's plan. And not only have they figured it out, but they've become extremely intelligent about it by reserving their fire, since most of the Confederate artillery fire was not having any effect. So after 45 minutes, when the Confederate artillery fire is nearing its end, then they send out Pickett's charge. Brigades under Kemper, Armistead, and Garnett come across the field a mile here. Garnett over here, Armistead right here in the center, and of course Kemper coming from this direction. As Kemper begins marching his brigade in this direction, he comes to an obstacle, and the obstacle would be the Corridori farm, which you see there dead center in front of us. Now, the Corridori house, the front of the house is the original, the back is after the Civil War, and that barn is not a Civil War barn and was not located where it is today. That barn was built in 1881. Often you see that barn on t-shirts or you know, people take pictures of it and think it's a Civil War barn. I even heard somebody say there's bullet holes in it. There is no bullet holes in it. They're knots in the wood. That is an 1881 barn. Kemper's brigade, at the time they get to the Corridori barn, they have to decide if they're going to go to the left of the barn, which is to our right, or to the right of the barn, which is our left. And they had decided to go to the right side of the Corridori farm, which is over here. And as they are advancing in this direction to the right of that barn, and Kemper's brigade consisted of the 1st, the 3rd, the 7th, the 11th, and the 24th Virginia Infantry. They also had near them the 14th Virginia under command of Colonel James Gregory Hodges. And I want you to remember that name. Well, anyway, these brigades, as they start to go into this area, and these Union troops here along the wall, the 20th New York State Militia, see them flanking over into this area, the brigade then realizes that more troops need to be focused in this area here. Immediately, Stannard's Vermonters right wheel into position, and they actually fire into the backs of Kemper's brigade. Troops along the wall here, like the 19th Maine, the 20th Massachusetts, and the 59th New York, are firing directly into the assault of Pickett's charge. And this is all near the end of Pickett's charge. This is near 3 o'clock in the afternoon of July 3rd of 1863, and what's happening. We're going to continue this on our next video here, the 20th New York State Militia on Gettysburg Battlefield Ultimate. Okay, I am standing here at the copse of trees, and this is going to be our next part of the 20th New York State Militia at Gettysburg, here on Gettysburg Battlefield Ultimate. I'm standing here at the marker for Cowan's 1st New York Battery Artillery Brigade of the 6th Corps, and it was here that Cowan's battery, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon of July 3rd, 1863, finished firing their ammunition. And down in the distance was Rority's battery. These two finished firing. Now, of course, the monument today says double canister at 10 yards, but that was before this action where they were firing double canister. After the double canister, they fired rounds as Kemper's brigade headed right here to the stone wall. They literally got feet within the stone wall. At the same time, Hall's and Harrow's brigades, which had been over here, began, and all their markers of Norman J. Hall's brigade are up here along the line. The Massachusetts regiments and the 7th Michigan, as well as the 42nd New York. They're under the command of Norman J. Hall. These brigades at that time then moved to the right. They moved literally where these monuments sit here today. These regiments began to move to the right here toward the copse of trees because all troops were converging here. Kemper was actually moving in this direction. So these troops began to move, and as they move, they open up a big hole in the Union line here along the wall here of Cemetery Ridge. And in our next part, we're going to talk about the 20th New York State Militia down this end of the line and their movement. This has been the next part of the 20th New York State Militia here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.